Dave da, how we doing? Welcome to podcast number 7. Hope you're doing well. We're all good here. I would say from my early 30s till I was 50, I pretty much worked 7 days a week, and also most of the evenings on weekdays, really. And until I turned 50, I think that was the wake-up call. You realise that life is just flying by, and it was at that time we took Julia on to help with a bit of the paperwork so that I could do less of that. So I don't do paperwork much at all evenings now. I still do a bit at weekends, but it does give me a lot more free time. And last Saturday I worked all day, but Sunday we did manage to get out Poles F with the dogs, and Lils came as well, and down by the sea. And that's what gave me the inspiration, really, for this week's podcast. Early on, when working with Father, we had quite a few trips out to sea, really, courtesy of Padstow Lifeboat. This would be for scattering of ashes at sea, and the lifeboat crew, they would allow us on board with a few family members on their training evenings. Back then, they was still using the old lifeboat station there at Orker's Cove, and 'twas quite something, really, to be on the lifeboat as we zoomed down the slipway and plunged into the sea. We would go out to sea for a little while, and then they would stop the boat. The vicar would be there and would say a few prayers, and then Father would lean over the side of the boat and scatter the ashes. I remember one time, 'twas brave and choppy, really, and Father was just leaning over the side, ready to scatter the ashes, and the boat dropped, well, I'd say 10 foot, but I doubt if it was that much, but it seemed like it. And dear old Father, he was still suspended in mid-air, and I thought, oh, he's going overboard here, but he did regain his footing, luckily, and then was able to start scattering the ashes, and all was well. We became good friends with all of the crew at the time, and Father really got on well, was good friends with the coxswain at the time, dear Trevor England, and the mechanic, Eddie Mert. Lovely chaps, but both sadly no longer with us now. If my memory serves me right, I remember a Radio Cornwall interview that they did with Eddie Mert, and the lady there found out that Eddie couldn't swim, and said, what happens if you're swept overboard or the boat goes down? And his answer went somewhere along the lines of, well, dear, I would sink down to the bottom, I'd turn around and face Padstow, and I'd run like hell. As I said, both true characters and very well thought of in lifeboat terms and in Padstow, and still remembered today. And as I speak, I think the coxswain of the boat at the minute is my old schoolmate, Richard Pittman, and Trevor's boy Mike, he is still the mechanic at the moment. Apart from these times, I think the only other time that I left dry land with anything to do connected with funerals was when we arranged a burial at sea. There was a well-known member of the community in a neighbouring village to us, and when he passed away, it was his request to have a church service and then to actually be buried at sea. The church service was arranged quite easily, but the burial, that was a little more complex. Father did all the arrangements at the time, and first he had to obtain permission, and then he was told the exact location where the burial had to take place. These days, I don't think you're allowed to have burials off Cornwall anymore. They have brought in a lot more restrictions. So we had strict instructions on the type of coffin, including where we had to drill holes to let the air out and to let the water in, and also the coffin and also the deceased both had to be weighted. The next piece of the jigsaw was the most difficult piece, really, and that was to find a boat. Father made quite a few inquiries locally, but everyone he spoke to was a little reluctant. I think from memory it may have been superstition that the boat owners weren't keen on bringing a dead body on board? I'm not sure, really. We were getting a little stumped, but then a local came forward and he'd heard that we were after a boat and that we were struggling, and he said he would be willing to help us. Sadly, he said himself he had a terminal illness and only had a short time left, so he wasn't really worried about the superstition side of it all. So we then had ourselves a boat. So all was sorted. The church was booked, but the day before the service, we had a call to say that 'twas going to be a bit too choppy, really, for the burial the next day. So from memory, I think we had the service in church, and then we came back to our chapel of rest, and we then booked up a second day. But sadly, again, 'twas a bit rough out at sea, and so we had a third date arranged, and then it was all systems go. So on the day, we headed out to sea, went to the exact location that was specified, and the committal service took place. The vicar was there and he said a few prayers, and then at the appointed time, we gently slid the coffin over the side of the boat. It floated on top of the water for a good few seconds. To me and Father, it seemed like a lifetime. We was thinking, crumbs, is it going to sink or no? But it wasn't terribly long, but it seemed a long time. And then, yes, it did gracefully sink into the sea. And I must admit, that's something else that I'll never forget. We then headed back to shore, and the journey was quite eventful, really. To give you the background, the boat had a bar on it, and the vicar himself, he was quite a character. I think he was ex-naval himself, but he's what I would call a typical vicar back then. He was very well spoken, quite tall, bowed over a little bit, half glasses, and he did like a little tipple, and he did like the odd cigarette. I do remember if we ever tried to get hold of him any time at the vicarage to sort out funerals, his wife would usually answer the phone, and perhaps on the rare occasion when she knew we needed an answer quick, she would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, he's not here at the minute. He's out around the parish on his rounds." And that was kind of a coded message to us that if we rang the pub just up the road, we would most probably get hold of him. And sure enough, we would give the pub a ring, and the landlord would answer the phone, have a quick yarn with us, and then hand the phone over, and we'd just get the quick response we wanted from the vicar, and all was well. So anyway, back to the funeral. As we started to head back to shore, the vicar asked if perhaps the bar could be opened. And so it was, and he suggested that perhaps it would be nice if we had double whiskies all round. Well, I was quite young at the time. I hadn't been on too long with Father, and I was surprised quite how quickly this first round went down. And the vicar suggested perhaps we could have a second round, which we did. And then we was coming back. We could see the shore in front of us, didn't have long to go. And again, he said to the skipper, if we were to slow down a bit here, I reckon we'd have enough time to have one more round, which we did. So then we got back to dry land, and everybody got off, and everybody was over the moon with how everything went. But all was well. Another experience to remember. So I think that's pretty much it, really, for this week's podcast. Thank you for listening, and I think I'll leave you with a quote from my dear old friend, the late JT. I remember being with him in Allensbar one night. I can't remember who was with us, but he put his arm round me and he said, Mr. Bray, he always called me Mr. Bray. He said, I just want to let you know that I want to be buried at sea. I want you to be the undertaker. And he pointed to the chap that was with us, and he said, I want you to make sure that he's a bearer. Dear of him, I'll tell you what, I went right home and put some money back for a snorkel and some flippers, but there we are. So say that's it for this week. I'll see you again next week. I ain't got a clue what I'm going to talk about next week, but I'm sure something will come to my mind. But have a good week. Wish you well. Do Guinness.